remember applying for the Adidas job. I think there was 500 people that applied for it. There was 10 people that interviewed. I was the only person out of the 10 that interviewed online and got lucky through that, where I got the job. But realistically, I'd put in the work selling myself, and again, like I'm doing today, telling a good story to tell my story, to then just go, okay, I'm going to just have a crack at my dream and see what comes of it.
G'day guys, coming up on the show today is Angus Yeates, a management graduate trainee at Adidas based in Melbourne. Not the retail shop, but at the APAC headquarters. Now, Angus's traineeship has introduced him to multiple parts of Adidas's operation, including category planning, e-commerce, digital wholesale, everything that goes on there, where he manages the brand's presence on Amazon. Now, since Angus became a Sports Grad member in 2022, Angus has proved himself to be one of the most impressive young people in the sports industry that I have ever come across. He's proactively gone to events, he's led coffee club catch-ups in Melbourne, and he's had a super active presence across LinkedIn. And because of all this, as a result, he's out there landing dream jobs. Angus beat a field of more than 500 people to land the job at Adidas, and after listening to him, I'm sure you'll quickly understand why. Let's go.
I started volunteering.
It's all about who you know in sport.
Am I going to be calling the last 10 seconds of the grand final?
You can connect with the interviewer. The hand goes up when they've got to make a decision.
Having a network is one of the most important things you can do.
I didn't necessarily follow my passion. I followed my curiosity.
Once you've worked in sport, there's no going back.
And then lo and behold, before I left, I got offered too.
Hello and welcome to the Sports Grad Podcast, the ultimate guide to make it in the sports industry, brought to you by Deakin University, home to the world's #1 sports science school. My name is Ruben Williams and I'm an ex-Cricket Australia employee who started Sports Grad to help others get their dream job in sport, and now it's become my own dream job. If we're not already, I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn or Instagram. And if it's your first time to the show, this is where we learn every single week what people do in the sports industry. We ask the people who are out there living the dream, how did you get your job and what does it actually involve so that you can start living your dream job in sports as well. Now, a quick shout out to our Sports Grad community. If you're not a Sports Grad member, I'd recommend jumping on a membership and getting involved with the Discord and all the different resources and job opportunities and events that you get to be a part of, because they are absolutely smashing it at the moment. Now, I've got a couple of people who I want to call out in particular. The first shout out of today I need to give to a very special friend of the show. His name is Pranav Sal. He's just like Angus, an extremely active member of the Sports Grad community. And it's no surprise that these active members get these dream jobs in sport, because Pranav is one of the most connected young people in the sports industry that I know. He was president of the Deakin Uni Sports Society, which is a role that I held back in the day. And he called me up the other day to say, Ruben, it seems to be a very good trajectory into sport because I have just landed a dream job at Cricket Australia in the events team. So look out for Pranav this summer because he's just landed a dream job in his dream sport. So well done to you, Pranav. I'm super happy for you. Now, another community win. This one is absolutely massive. This one goes to Shayla Clark, one of our pro members. Now, Shayla was on the podcast earlier this year to talk about her role at the Richmond Football Club. She has since made the move over to London, and she has landed a job in events and fan engagement at Chelsea Football Club, one of the absolute behemoths in world sport. My favourite Premier League team. I was born 800 metres up the road from Stamford Bridge, and now Shayla has got a dream job there. So well done to you, Shayla. That is just absolutely epic. And not a Sports Grad member, but another podcast guest, Jacob Gaynor, has just become the head of content at the GWS Giants. So well done to you, Jacob. The GWS content has been outstanding all year, and that is a thoroughly deserved position. And for someone who's in their mid to late 20s, to reach head of is nothing to sneeze at. So well done to you, Jacob. Now, as always, there's plenty of events coming up in Sports Grad land, and I just want to call out one in particular because there's about 10 different events available that you can join with Sports Grad at the moment. Lots of different industry intros to people working in sport, lots of different speed networking events to grow your network quickly and get introductions to people. But this one is absolutely massive. We have got the Executive General Manager of People and Culture at Cricket Australia coming in this week when this podcast goes out. Her name is Alison Robertson, and she's coming in to talk about what she looks for when she's hiring people, how you can stand out in your applications, and basically how to be a successful candidate from the point of view of Cricket Australia. So if that is your dream job, I'd highly recommend registering for that. And if you're listening to this after the date, then don't worry, because we record everything and it goes out to members. So if you are applying for a job at Cricket Australia and you'd love to know, like, what do they look for? Jump on a membership, you get access to that resource straight away, and that will cut your research down very, very quickly. So that is coming up on the 6th of November at 12 p.m. over lunch. So get around that if you haven't already. Otherwise, if you'd like some regular career advice in your inbox and you want to stay up to date with all the SportsGrad events, head to sportsgrad.com.au and you'll never miss out on a chance to grow your network. All right, grab a pen and enjoy this chat with Angus Yeates from Adidas. Have you got your eye on a future in sport? If you're ready to transform the industry, then perhaps get ready to study with Deakin and prepare yourself to redefine what it means to work in sport. That's what I did, at least. Deakin's School of Exercise and Nutrition Sciences is ranked #1 in the world. Pretty cool, hey? So if you want to turn your passion for sport into an impactful career, get ready to push the limits of exercise science, sport coaching, sport development, sport management, nutrition sciences, physical education, and more. You can do it all at Deakin. Apply now and study at Deakin University. Angus, welcome to SportsGrad, mate.
Thanks for having me, Ruben.
Angus, you've been around SportsGrad for a long, long time now, and I think you have probably clocked up the most number of attendances at online events and in-person events. But we know you most for your hockey abilities. I believe you recently won a premiership. Is that right?
If you've been looking on the Instagram channels, we have recently got ourselves a premiership. Second, I think 2 in a row now. I wasn't a part of the first one, but a nice little come from behind victory. So we're doing pretty well. MCC, big shout out to them.
And you're an international player, right? I believe you've taken your hockey career around the world.
I'm not as good as some, but I've been very fortunate to travel with my sport, and I think that's probably been the beauty of it. I was lucky to spend a year in Germany in a small town called Bremen, which is pretty close to Hamburg, where I was able to play, and it was just an incredible sort of opportunity, I guess, that I stumbled across and made the most of.
Fantastic, mate. Well, you've listened to enough podcasts to know that I like to start with a few quick fire questions to kick things off. They have had a little bit of an update, which is exciting too. So I'm going to fire off the first one to you, which is what inspired you to work in sport?
I think being in the environment was the first thing that really captured me. I had been, I guess, from a kid, whether it was kicking the footy around, playing cricket, you're always watching your heroes on sport on TV. And so for me, I just wanted to, I guess, follow that sort of path. And as I sort of went along, coaching, umpiring, different roles started to pop up, as well as playing. So being able to do both sides of that was just a great experience.
Wonderful, mate. And what was your first ever job?
Yeah, I think it was when I was an umpire and coach for my local hockey club, which would have been Devonport Hockey Club back in Tasmania, and just helping out the kids and doing my little part, probably when I was about 14 and that sort of then flew to another thing. And the umpiring was quite a good way to start to, I guess, do another side of hockey apart from just the playing.
Love it. I was a soccer ref back in the day as well. So you and me both. And what did you study, mate?
So I went to University of Tasmania and did a Bachelor's of Business. I started out doing a double degree in business and law and realised very quickly that I was not going to practice. So pivoted out of that one, and I've now hopefully just finished my Master's of Business at Deakin University. So it's been a great experience. It's going to be weird not studying for a little bit, but it's, you put in the hours and it's definitely paid off now.
You might get the itch. You just have to go and enroll in something just to keep yourself sane.
Just muck around and get a PhD, isn't that right?
Yeah, exactly. Good friend of SportsGrad, Lincoln, knows all about that. He'll talk to you about it if you need. And interview question: is there any particular one that you remember being asked in your interview for Adidas?
Yeah, there was one that really stood out to me, which was how have you handled adversity and worked through that? So for me, that sort of was perfect timing. As I just come back from Germany, I'd been through a few different things where you're playing, and it hadn't really worked out in the fact that playing, but I'd also got injured. And again, I didn't speak German. So having to also battle that language barrier to then get a job. I remember trying to get a job at Werder Bremen, which is the Bundesliga club, and getting knocked back. They said, look, you've got all the skills, but you just don't speak German. And that was a bit of a kicker. And I was like, okay, well, I've got to figure out how to, get something out of this. And I started out just laboring, which is, I thought I've moved all the way to the other side of the world just to do a job I could do back in Tasmania if I wanted. But from that, I stuck at it. I was lucky that I ended up getting an internship with a company called Vector Foil Tech, which is a building company, and they've actually built the most recent Super Bowl stadium roof. So it's a cool little connection again to sport. And yeah, that was really a good way and a good challenge for me to then take my learnings and come back and realize what I actually wanted to get out of myself. And you work through those challenges, and again, you come out the other side and you go, oh, that was actually, I've done it now. Let's see what's next.
I'm sure they would have loved that answer. If we had known about you at the time, we would have connected you with Gav Marnie from episode 30. He works at Leading Teams, but one of his earliest experiences was at a random Div 2 German soccer club in like a random marketing role before he went on to AFL London, I believe, then came back to Australia. So he knows all about the challenges of not sprechen Sie Deutsch, and could have helped you maybe break in. But if you ever want to go back to that, then he's your guy.
I'll have to pick up Duolingo.
That's it. And apologies to all the German people who I've just butchered the accent for. Book or podcast, is there any particular one that you enjoy that you'd recommend?
Yeah, podcast. Mark Boris, Straight Talk. I really love what Mark Boris does. He's founder of Yellow Brick Road for mortgage broker, but Mark's worked in so many different businesses. He's worked very closely with Kerry Packer and comes from a long line of just, being in many different businesses and working through some pretty interesting challenges. How you manage to, I guess from a business side, that's where I've really enjoyed of how he's handled those different challenges. And he gets some really interesting guests on, which is away from a bit more of a localized version of the self-help. So that's a good way for people if they want to check that one out.
Love it. He's a good resource. And final question for you. If you could swap jobs for a day, who would you like to try out?
I reckon I could give Stephen A crack for his money on First Take with the NFL analysts. So I reckon that would be great fun, getting on there and letting it fly and letting everyone know how bad the Dallas Cowboys are right now would absolutely be great fun.
Love it, mate. Well, I don't think you'd be out of place there with the amount of articles and reporting that you're doing on LinkedIn too. So we'll keep watching this space to see where you take your career next. But thanks for sharing those. Let's dive into a bit about your career journey, and we'll come back to exactly what you're doing at Adidas at the moment, because it is super, super impressive and a really cool grad role as well that I'm sure a lot of people may not be aware about, but would like to be aware about. But yeah, walk us through the series of steps and experiences that kind of led you from those uni days to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think where I'd like to start is probably when I was working in golf, of all places. I was lucky that I'd probably, finished my undergrad degree, and I was sort of trying to figure out, okay, what's next? I've, had a pretty easy life down in Hobart, Tasmania, and just managed to find my way, always connected to sports some way. So I was very focused at the time of playing my field hockey, and on the side, I'd work a casual job at Intersport. So there was a connection to, sport in some ways. And I remember going for a driver fitting at Royal Hobart Golf Club, and the professional I'd been playing for a little while then, like probably a year or so. And the pro got me on the simulator, and I was hitting a few balls, and he was like, oh, gee, this ball's going pretty far. But I don't know how one thing led to another, but I managed to get offered a casual job out of that conversation, which is very, just thought, oh, this guy's hitting the ball pretty long. I need someone to work, and knew that I was at uni, and I just got lucky and fell into that sort of, that role. And so that sort of started my journey within sport and working in sport. I think before that, I didn't really know that I wanted to work in sport. I had a rough idea that, I've got a connection. I know people in there roughly from my field hockey experience, but didn't really know exactly. And so working then in golf, I managed to get a job at Kingston Beach Golf Club as well as Royal Hobart, working casually, managing those while still starting to do a bit of study. And I got offered a job while I was at Royal Hobart to then go to full-time, where I started to undertake my traineeship to become a professional golfer. Again, one of those things where if you're in the environment, there's no reason why you can't get better at golf. I had some incredible people. So Scott Laycock, who is a former PGA player, and Matt Docking, who used to play on the Asian Tour, as my bosses. And they were not only, great role models on how they went about their golf, but I learned a lot about myself through that journey of, even though my golf probably wasn't where I ended up landing, I learned a lot about, how do you handle those, challenges. And you learn very quickly from golf how you handle emotions and how you can handle those setbacks and not playing well. And that was a good sort of period of my time, I think, where I probably grew up a bit and probably needed that. And there was a lot of working in a team of 4 people covering 12-hour days where you just have to make it whatever happens work. And I remember having to still play hockey at that age, and where it was like, you want to go out and party with your mates, you want to go and have a bit of fun. But my weekends were Saturday. I'd work the entire week. My days off, I'd be playing golf because it was part of the traineeship program. So then I would use my weekends on Saturdays. I'd open the shop at 6 a.m. I'd work through till lunchtime. I'd have a game of hockey around lunchtime, which my boss was nicely let me go out and play. And then I'd come back and close up the shop, wash the carts down, close the till, and get everything sorted and ready for the Sunday morning. And sneakily on the side, you'd go home, have dinner, and then I would probably go out to town from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. because that was my social time. And I wanted to still have that interaction with friends, even though I was so stuck in this golf world. And I realized very quickly when, you've got to back up and you've got to be at work again, 6 a.m. the next morning, that this lifestyle is not really where I want to be. It's pretty tough being in the golf industry, and to all the pros and that are out there working, and the ground staff as well, and even, hospo workers within that space, your work is so appreciated. And I think members should appreciate that work that they do, because it is long hours, probably for not a lot of reward. So you really are doing it for the love of it. So I probably got to a point there where I'd been down that path. I'd also decided that I was going to start doing my master's degree at the same time while working full time, which was a lot, again, to handle, but I thought, let's just give it a crack. I took that on and realized as I sort of got into it that there was probably a bigger world out there than just this golf world. And I think at the time, to be honest, I probably just didn't know how to quit. I was in that golf space and was pretty burnt out, having to work those big hours, do everything, plus your study and play hockey at a high level. Something had to give. And for me, the way that I sort of found that way and that outlet was to start hunting around and see what I could actually do with my hockey. And the hockey was a good option. And I managed to find a contract over in Germany, and they were like, yep, we'll come over, we'll sort you out, we'll get your flights, accommodation, we'll set you up, and let's see how you go. And I was like, look, let's just do it. I just went to my boss and said, hey, I'm going to chase this. I want to see what I can get out of my hockey and get the most out of my, playing while I'm still, at a point. And I knew that I probably wasn't going to play for Australia, but I thought, let's just see what else I can do at a club level. And that was a great experience. It was probably the hardest period of my life, having left, a long-term relationship. We had a unit down in Tasmania and everything that was set up, to then just go, okay, I'm going to just have a crack at my dream and see what comes of it. And as I mentioned, I think just a little bit earlier, working those tough jobs that are just rubbish. They suck. And the first job that I had to do, I remember, was I had to pull these massive 25 kilo pavers, someone's driveway, up, and I was working for cash. And at the time I was like, I've come all this way and this is my reality right now. So to be able to sort of take that and realize, oh, there's got to be something better out there, was pretty difficult to sort of work through. But I think that sort of set me in a good stead. I focused pretty hard on making sure that I was obviously as fit as I could be for hockey. But then as well, that's probably when SportsGrad was a really good sort of way and an outlet to almost connect me back to home and almost as a check-in. And I, again, got quite lucky that when I was over in Germany through the hockey club, it probably took me 6 months of this hard labor. And I just, again, it was a very isolating time as well, having to deal with, a breakup and no work that you sort of, you think, oh, I've got a degree. I can, I should be right. Surely someone can employ me. But again, you're dealing with a new country and different challenges. And so I was quite lucky that I landed an internship through one of the people at the hockey club. And it turned out that Vector Foil Tech was it was a very small company in Bremen, but for my benefit, it was English speaking. And so that was awesome. I thought, great, I can at least talk English at work and not feel like I'm the only one there, even though I know all Germans really do speak great English. They just don't really want to. And so working at Vector Foil Tech, I started to work in some data space. So working on Salesforce and trying to get all their files and just some basic sort of admin roles. But from there, I was able to then come along to sales meetings, start meeting with clients. My boss, Phil Schneider, who was great enough to take me along and, gave me some chances that, I probably wouldn't have got if I was at some other larger organization at the time. And I think for me, I was like, this is great. I just want anything that I can, do the best that I can. And from there, it sort of, worked out quite well. The hockey sort of didn't work as well as I'd love just because I got injured and those things happen. You kind of do that. But when it's almost like an identity thing, right? Your identity is the sport and you think, okay, well, I'm Angus and I play hockey. But when the hockey gets taken away, it's like, oh, well, who am I? Like, what do I actually stand for? And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this will have been through that point in their life where they've got to figure out, who am I? What am I actually doing this for? And for me at the time, I think it sort of made sense to come back to Australia. I probably had a bit of time where I traveled around, seen some stuff, and I made the call after a year to go, okay, I'm going to come home and have a bit of time at home, reset, and figure out my next step. And it was probably a great time to do that. Realize that when you get back that, everything's the same. Nothing will ever change. And if you think, you're always going to be able to come home. If everything goes wrong, you can always come home. And that for me, that was quite nice to have. So I came back to Tasmania and started again working some pretty crappy jobs. I was working in pulling asbestos out of an old a towel factory in Devonport. And that was, again, didn't expect to be doing that, but that was what had to be done. And again, I was quite lucky that I got the role through just someone that I knew through golf. And golf is quite good for connections. And that was probably the good thing from that. Worked at that job. And again, this is probably the time, again, back in Germany, that I had probably started spending a bit more time working on spending time at SportsGrad and turning up and listening to people talk. And then also focusing on what I was doing personally. And for me, didn't really have a whole lot of people that I could go and talk to or connect with in Germany. It was a bit of an isolating sort of time. So I had to figure out a way to do it. And I guess I fell into that LinkedIn space. And LinkedIn's been quite a great tool for me to, I guess, showcase my experiences, but also connect with such a wide range of people. And I guess building on that, when I then came back to Australia, even though I wasn't working in the most ideal jobs, I was still had a connection. So I could then reach out to people that I knew, talk to them. Okay, this is, and then start to set up some calls. It worked out quite well. Managed to get lucky. I don't even remember applying for the Adidas job, but I think there was 500 people that applied for it. There was 10 people that interviewed. I was the only person out of the 10 that interviewed online and got lucky through that, where I got the job. But realistically, I'd put in the work, selling myself, and again, like I'm doing today, telling a good story to tell my story. So that's where I'm sort of at right now.
Amazing, mate. What a journey you've been on. And I wouldn't say that you are lucky. I think you've deserved everything that's come your way. And knowing you now after a couple of years of being in that job and seeing the progress you've made, it's no surprise you landing that position and what would have been happening before, I met you. But even as well, just personally, so much resonates with what you were saying as well in terms of, even just going through a breakup to chase a dream or, having your identity attached to one particular thing and trying to detach from that. For me, it was Cricket Australia and when I was made redundant as well. So it is awesome to kind of see where you've landed now. That's probably a good segue to chat more about what you're actually doing now. What does a graduate program at Adidas actually involve? What are the things you get up to during your time there?
This is why everyone's here now. They want to hear the actual good stuff. So the graduate program.
That was the good stuff.
Yeah. So the Adidas Graduate Management Trainee program initially was set up across Asia Pacific, but it's a 24-month, 2-year program. We work 6 months across 4 different components of the business. So I started with category planning, which is basically forecasting all the cool product that you'll see from Adidas that comes out in Australia and New Zealand. I then moved into e-com, working within partner programs as well as on-site optimization. So that was working with the likes of the Iconic, eBay, and the Dom. And now currently where I'm working in is the digital wholesale space, and that's managing Amazon, specifically working with a lot of their on-site optimizations, ads, and just trying to get more people onto that platform. It's a beast. And I think the best part of probably what I've experienced is it's different to the rest of sport. You can go and work for AFL or cricket, but this probably doesn't have a whole lot of crossover. This is brand, and brands are a massive part of sport, and we need to remember that. It's a whole ecosystem that we're a part of. So for me, being able to be a part of Adidas, an international brand and German, which is cool, I think it's a great stepping stone for me to be able to get myself as many different skills and build that during this year and a half that I've been into right now, to then start to figure out where I want to land and the areas that you do like. And I think for me, I haven't had that light bulb moment, and maybe I won't have that light bulb moment, but I think it's more important for some people, it might resonate that you figure out what you don't like rather than what you do.
So it still sounds like, how old are you again, just for reference?
Just turned 25, so.
25. So it still sounds like even after going through study, traveling for a while, master's degree, at 25, you're still kind of figuring out like what direction you want to take your career, which is totally fine, but it's just interesting to kind of understand how long that process can take and what sort of things you absorb to then decipher from. How have you found that journey so far, and have you come up with any answers? What's that feeling like at the moment?
I think you can really learn a lot by obviously putting yourself in uncomfortable positions. It's the things that you don't learn much from staying where you are. And that was 100% me in Tasmania. I was very comfortable and everything around me was very easy. It was very, didn't have to do a whole lot. You just ticked along but you don't learn much. For some people, that might mean that you've got to go and travel. And for me, that's what I needed to do. I needed to go out and have absolutely nothing around me and just figure it out the hard way. It's not for everyone, of course, but I think the more you put yourself in positions or you take on roles that you might not be comfortable with, you're going to learn more about yourself. You'll learn how you handle that stress, how you handle, the balance of your work-life balance and doing those things. And you figure out what you actually want to get out of your career. There's so many different ways to take it. So there's no right answer, I don't think.
Yep. You've been in the sports industry for a little while now. For those who are looking to try and get into it, are there any particular problems or issues with the sports industry that you think people should be aware of first before they make the jump into it?
I think you've got to consider why you actually want to work in sport. It's all well and good to be like, oh, I just want to work for my AFL club because I love them. That's fine. That's not an issue at all. But for example, if you're chasing money and you want to just, I want to earn this and I want to retire by that time. Well, is sport really what you want to do? Why don't you just go work in, the mines or financials or, become a doctor? It's, you've got to really figure out what you want as a person. And it's not, not necessarily for everyone. Sport's a great balance between a passion that I've got. And I think being able to work in a brand like Adidas has definitely helped sort of have that connection to sport, but also understanding the holistic side of business. There's so many different avenues that you can take your skills. And although you might work in something else at the moment, you can always pivot into sport and vice versa. So keeping yourself and your options open is really important, I think.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I came out of uni just being like a pretty lost kid who loved sport, had no idea what I wanted to do in sport, was happy to do anything, and probably fell into the same category as many others who are like, oh, I'm passionate about it, but like quickly realized that, passion's not enough because there's literally a billion people in the world who love sport. Tell us a bit about the networking that you've been up to. And because I see on LinkedIn, you're very active there. Recently, I think you put a selfie just having a Zoom catch up with a couple of people. Like how do you end up in a situation where you're online chatting with people around the world?
Yeah, it just happens sometimes, but the way that I think, use your network that you've got is probably the best thing that I'd say to people. If you can, have a chat. For example, if I talk to Ruben right now and I go, hey, Ruben, can you give me 3 different people that that you can connect me with? I'll do the work. I'll reach out to them, but you need to give me the people, whether it's within a specific area. And I've been able to be quite lucky to do this, whether doesn't necessarily have to be within, Adidas. I've been able to do this quite well internally within the business, but it could also be externally. I remember having a chat with Jimmy Barron, and it was at the time right when I got the job, and I remember sort of going into that chat thinking about, I might need to I want to pick his brains about how he got to where he was. And then when you got the job, does that actually change the conversation? Maybe it doesn't, but I think knowing why you're having these conversations is important. You obviously need to listen. You need to understand what these people do for their roles, but you're just trying to take little bits from it. You're not necessarily, on your hands and knees begging for a job. And I think if you can get away from that sort of thing, and I'm sure you're similar, Ruben, you've probably got lots of messages in your DMs asking for jobs, and everyone's, asking, I love Adidas. Can I get a job? Well, I'm not Adidas. I'm Angus. So there's no point, telling me how great Adidas is. I want to, tell me why you're interested in what I'm doing. Have you actually done the research on a specific area that I'm, working in, or something that I've shared and then you've found interest in? So I think taking that path and being like, hey, I saw your post, that's quite interesting. For example, the 2 girls that reached out to me from UC Berkeley just wanted to talk about Adidas and how it worked and how the brand worked from a sports marketing perspective. So I said, yep, let's just do 30-minute call. I'll give you a perspective. Doesn't have to be right or wrong, but it's just a top line of what we do. So maybe hopefully there's some things in that to help people.
I love that. That's so real. I'm not Adidas. I'm Angus. I'm going to borrow that one, I think, next time someone asks me like, hey, can I have a job? Very, very true. We've got plenty of questions coming in through members here. Before we jump into that, tell us a bit about your time as a sports member. Like, where were you at when you decided to join, and how has it helped your career since then?
Yeah, so probably just found out about Sports Grad through Deakin and through following Ruben and following Ryan. And then I guess at that point I had an interest in sport, but didn't really know a whole lot about what was in there and what Sports Grad was all about. Once I jumped in and saw how people were doing it and how, people were working in sport, and I thought, okay, that helps. That's, it's giving me, if anything, a different perspective of what I'm doing. And you only know what you know when you're in your job. So I think that's also really important for people, is to get exposed to different areas. That's the beauty of networking, is that you learn different things from people who do something that's completely different to you. For me at that point, I think it was probably in Europe where I was able to delve deeper into that. I remember actually I was actually at the time living in Bremen, and through the Sports Grad, I met Alex Hay, who has done an interview on here, and connected with Alex. And Alex said, "Hey, I've got some connections in London." At the time, I was planning on heading over there, and there was a group called the Muller Group, and they're basically Australians working in England. And for me, that helped so much to be able to then go over there to a random networking night, watch the Australia play Argentina in the World Cup for the opening first round. Was, great fun. And I met so many interesting people, and those people I was then able to build on, have a chat with them. You don't necessarily have to do it face to face, right? Zoom, LinkedIn are great tools. So for me, Sports Grad was able to connect all those things together and gave me a little foot up, I guess, to be able to talk about what I was doing and to be able to connect with people who were maybe in the similar position, but had also gone and done it already. So it's a good mix, I think. Is that what Sports Grad sort of offers?
When you were saying before about learning from different perspectives, is that because at that point in time you're trying to figure out where is my place in the sports industry that I can fit in and find a role that I enjoy?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say it, I still don't know exactly where I'm going to end up from this program. And I know that as long as I keep doing the right things through my networking, through chatting with different people, getting different perspectives, I might not have, as I said, I'm not going to have that I might not have that light bulb moment that just goes, yeah, that's perfect. But I think having the perspectives to then figure out what you want to do is way more, figuring out what you don't like is almost more important.
Absolutely. Well, I'm still figuring it out now, and I'm just turned 30, so it's an evolving beast, that is for sure. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this chat with Angus Yeates, did you know you can actually be part of the conversation? That's right. Every week we invite industry professionals to come into the Sports Grad community, talk about their career journey, share their advice, and answer your questions with members. Now, members who are a Connect member or a Fast Track member can be a part of these conversations, which gives you the chance to grow your network, ask questions directly to industry professionals, and learn immediately from them. So if you're liking the sound of this podcast, you want to meet more people like Angus, come and be a part of the conversation and jump on a Sports Grad membership to do so. To jump on that, head to sportsgrad.com.au. Let's go to some member questions now. We've got heaps in here, which is amazing. We're going to start with Pat, who says, what advice would you give for someone who wants to work overseas based on your experiences in Germany?
You've just got to go. Having a rough plan is always nice. The hardest thing is just leaving, I think, to be honest. And for me, I was lucky that I've had that contract to sort of just go, yep, your flights are booked. This is the day you're leaving and you're going. For people who aren't going to have that, you just have to take the leap of faith, have a little bit of cash behind you, which I think is really important because things will happen that you just will not be prepared for. But as long as you're willing to take a risk and you have a rough idea of what you want to figure out, go for it. I think that's the hardest thing, is just getting started. Once you're on that plane's not turning around. So just make the most of it.
Great question, Pat. Faison says, I am an English-speaking master's student in sport management in Europe, and I'm facing challenges finding internships due to language barriers. I'm preparing for a marketing internship at Adidas in Milan, Italy, and I meet the eligibility criteria. What specific strategies can I use to enhance my chances of being selected for this position?
All I can say, I guess, from my perspective is just tell a good story about what you've done. If you've come all this way and you've done the work and you've put yourself in the position to be there, you're obviously there for a reason. So whether it's a yes or no this time, it happens, right? I got knocked back. I remember when I was applying for jobs when I came back from Australia, I was applying for everything, whether it was casual, like bar work, for anything. I just wanted a job. So that's not the way to do it though. You need to be a bit more specialized about an area that you want to be in. And I think that's probably the best advice, is just tell a good story about why you've done it and what's made you get to this point.
Faison, one other resource that might help you is the webinar that we did with Stella Barry, who is a girl from Melbourne. She's 22 years old and she landed a job with the Paris Olympic Committee as the content creator for the at Paris 2024 TikTok channel. And she was working for a French-speaking organization as an English-speaking person, but she still managed to get the job. So if you go find her resource in the members area, she's got some good perspectives on how to cross that barrier. Billy says, at what point, if you had this / experienced this, have you had to weigh up how much you want to do the job, get the experience, etc., versus take into account the money for the job and putting you first?
Yeah, that's a great question, Billy. I think you see this especially within high paying roles. So the higher you climb the corporate ladder, the more responsibility you take on, the more, I guess, that balance between the work-life balance you need to sort of start to consider, because, you know, things will come along as you go. And I can see a lot for the people and my peers that I work with is that sometimes that phone's just always on. And to be honest, within Australia, and New Zealand, we've got it a lot better than some other places. So you need to also consider the location that you're going to work in. So I think that's a big one for me, and especially being in a company like Adidas, is that, you know, I could go and work in a different country, but that lifestyle and that responsibility, you know, might not necessarily be the right thing for me, or it might be. It's hard to know before you get into these things, but it is absolutely, you need to figure out first, you know, why you're doing the job, how much are you going to invest into this, because you need to make sure that you still do a really good job of what you're doing, whatever it is, before you know, start to build all the other things out. So I think for me personally, being able to multi-manage different things has just been the way that I've always done it. So just figure out how it works for you.
Great question, Billy. Athava says, what skills or knowledge do you find most valuable in your current / past roles that you didn't learn in university?
Yeah. Two things, Excel and presenting are the two things that I didn't get enough experience in at university. You know, when I first started, I remember putting a presentation together for the brand team and not having any idea about how it all worked. I remember looking at it and just, this is a dog's breakfast. This is awful. No one said it to me and no one gave me the feedback on it. But looking back on it, I'm like, oh my God, I actually presented that. So being able to learn how to present really well is so important. People don't read what's on your slides. I've sat through a week this week at Adidas is our brand week. And everyone has a video and everyone just has the simplest message, a picture, maybe a short message. This is so important, especially when you're talking to numbers and things like that, because that's, you know, for most people, it's pretty boring. So how do you make that engaging? And I think for me, Adidas has been able to give me some really good tools. Use your LinkedIn Learning, which is a great tool. Do the courses, but actually open the Excel doc and practice it. Don't just watch it. It's the one thing where you won't learn anything if you just do that. Presenting, I've been quite lucky to do like a TED Talk presentation where I'll be able to speak with different people across the world and present what I've learned. So you start to pick up on different things of how you talk. Do you go or do you how do you start your sentences? Many different perspectives like that. So Excel, presenting. If you can practice those in any way, which to be honest, you could probably just get a piece of paper or something and start to talk, will make such a difference.
One past podcast guest who's got some great advice and tactics on how to speak better is AFL commentator Brian Taylor, who was on the podcast in episode 210. If you want to go back and have a listen to that episode, he can teach you his methods to how he ironed out his voice and became the commentator he is today. Vincent says, hi Angus, Vinny here. How would you weigh the importance of networking in securing the internship role at Adidas specifically? How much did it impact it to play with the job you got now?
It had no impact. It's weird that we preach all this stuff, but I went through it the most formal way. I applied for the job. I did the pre-interviews. I did the assessments. I got the interview. I got the job. So that goes against everything that we talk about in sport. I think you've just got to, I don't think I would change anything that I did. I made sure that I was talking to everyone within sport and the areas that I was interested in. I remember doing a lot of work thinking that I was going to go back into golf because that was my, what I knew. But I'm so glad that I didn't. And I've opened up a whole other can of worms of different things that I can do. So I think, look, networking unfortunately didn't play a part for me, but it's not, obviously, other jobs. Once you get someone, I think the one thing I'd say is that if you go and network at an event or something, make sure you get their name somehow. Just write it down. Get them on LinkedIn. There's so many different ways. Give them a business card. That stand out it's such a good tip now because everyone uses their phones. But how many people still have a business card? It's being able to then separate yourself from the pack. So don't stop networking.
That's it. The easiest way to differentiate yourself is do things that other people are not prepared to do. Athava says, what trends or developments in the sports industry excite you the most right now?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Well, I guess from an Adidas perspective, we've got some, incredible things going on and, nothing I can share now, but I'm looking forward to seeing what the brand will do within the Pacific region. I remember us, being a part of Hawthorn and things like that. And there's going to be some amazing things that are coming, which is going to be awesome. So looking forward to seeing how the brand, keeps being a part of that. But I think overall, the role that the more connected that we are to sport through different channels is so cool. I think being able to, get so much exposure to the US, we are such a US-driven market, but then also, the influence that Asia has on us. There's so many different trends and things that happen. So always, looking for those things. And personally, I just love looking at some of the stuff that comes out of the US with the NFL and the golf. And we've had some amazing guests on SportsGrad talking about that. So I'm sure Ruben could throw a few names out there that have worked in that space.
Aubrey Walton, Michael Wolfert, list goes on. Tell us about the Sambas though, because you helped me get a pair of these lovely black Samba Adidas shoes. They are selling like hotcakes at the moment. Can you tell us a bit about the wave that Adidas is going through at the moment in terms of brands? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal trend that Adidas is on right now. So I think we came through a period where a lot of us would remember Kanye West and the period where that sort of partnership unfortunately didn't go as well as we would have liked. So the brand was sort of looking at a different sort of place there where we were very much focused on, I guess, direct to consumer facing. But we've been able to pivot really nicely. And when you're able to create really good products that consumers want, and then you're able to pick it up with different things through trends, you'll see the crossover as well through categories. You don't just see, him or her wearing a pair of Sambas. You'll see them wearing a Samba, but they might also be wearing a Manchester United football top. It's those crossovers and the way that sport is always a part of culture. And that's probably the big momentum driver that Adidas is going through right now. And I think with our competitors, in different positions, and also within a market within Australia, which is currently, it's pretty stagnant. There's not a whole lot of growth, but consumers notice when you've got something that's really good. And so, for example, the Samba has been, I reckon there's a lot of people on the call that probably have a pair as well. And, they're listening to this will have a pair. So you can always remember, and I think this is the one thing that Adidas wants to be great at, is you can always remember that first pair of shoes or that trend that got you excited. And I still remember when I first got a sponsorship from Adidas when I was like 13, and it was awesome. I remember having the hockey stick and the shoes, and I remember I took my dad down to the hockey ground and did like a little photo shoot to post some photos and stuff, because it felt awesome. So having those memories, and that's where I think Adidas wants to be, is that memory for most people.
Love it. Adrian says, how have the realities of working at Adidas perhaps differed from your initial expectations, good or bad, and how did you adapt to make the most of the opportunity?
Yeah, I think, you can get caught up in the bright lights and going, oh my God, it's, a massive company and things like that. And I think wouldn't have asked to do an internship or a graduate program anywhere else. It has been very eye-opening, because you are exposed to not only just your local market, you're exposed internationally. Our headquarters are in Germany, so we hear a lot of different messages, and we get to see things and we get to understand why things are happening in different markets. Why does it work in Germany, but it might not work in Korea? Why does it work in Australia? So being exposed to that wide breadth of resources is phenomenal. So I think maximizing that has been really good. I think obviously the challenge for some people might be that you might have to do a few late night calls and things like that, because we are, I guess our headquarters are based in different places, and we are now under emerging markets, which is a different model. So mainly coming out of Dubai. So there's those late calls, and that's probably comes back to that work-life balance, where some people might not be as comfortable with that. But again, we work in sport. You've got to work in weird hours sometimes to do amazing roles. So I think the time that you put into this and the exposure to be able to see the heat that the brand has at the moment that we just talked about is pretty rewarding. So I'm loving every moment of it.
There's not too many other industries where your deadline literally cannot move. Like, if the match is happening at this time, the match is happening then. If Adidas is sponsoring the FIFA World Cup's not moving. You got to have everything ready before then, whereas other industries can be like, oh, we'll just push it back a little bit. It doesn't happen in sport. Athava says, would you say, whilst on the path of understanding perspectives and not knowing where you'll end up eventually, is it as important to enjoy that journey of gaining knowledge and perspective?
Absolutely. You're spot on. I think you're getting perspectives, which is really good, but I'm not sure how you feel, Rubes, but I just enjoy this journey. You're not going to have, but it is really important. I think this is one thing that I probably didn't do when I first started, was just to enjoy those moments. And I just remember my own parents telling me, it's like, you've got to just enjoy it. I was always, and probably still am a little bit, of in that mentality of what's next. Okay, I've finished my master's. Okay, what's next? So I'm just about to finish with another part of the grad program. Okay, what's next? That's a great mentality to have, but I think it's important to enjoy what you do. Sit back and actually, say, pat yourself on the back a little bit and say, okay, I did a good job. That was a great achievement. Just enjoy, those moments, because they don't always come along, and you'll look back and go, oh, gee, I didn't do much for that. I should have maybe given that a bit more of a celebration than I did, but a few more beers or something. But, that always helps. So just got to live in the moment a little bit more.
That's it. No, there were definitely a lot of ups and downs when I was trying to break into sport. And then the roller coaster is definitely a lot rockier in my entrepreneurship journey. And so I've learned that that there are enough ups and downs that if there's an up, celebrate, because there'll eventually be a down. And if there's a down, don't stress too much, because eventually there'll be an up, and it's just part of the process. So yeah, definitely do what you can to soak it in while you can. Hudson says, how often do you seek feedback from your employer, and what is the most important piece of feedback you have received? Great question.
That is good. I think, look for, if you've got really good managers and you have people within that corner that you feel comfortable, creating that relationship where you can get feedback is so important. I've had many different managers, and there will be ones where you just feel like you can't talk to them. But the way that you get around that, and I'm sure a lot of people will have experienced that, where you're like, I just don't want to talk to that person. And it builds up the anxiety and it builds up, extra stress that you just didn't even think was there. So the way that I think is the best way to handle that is to get that out straight away. When you first initially set that boundary, obviously this, in a right world, but make it clear. How do you receive feedback? Do you need to get a positive and negative and a positive sort of thing? Or for me, I personally, if something's wrong, just tell me. I want to know, and I want to be able to fix it. So by someone telling me straight, Angus, you've stuffed up. I'd rather hear that, because then I can work at it and I can fix it. If I don't know, I've got no idea. And I think being able to receive feedback is really important for sure. So figure out how you do it. Do you need a little bit more around that? You've just got to know yourself personally and how you handle those stressful times. But communication, don't go silent. And that's probably one thing I probably copped early within this grad program, was by saying nothing is not always necessarily the best thing, but you need to make sure that you're checking in, doing the right things, and maximizing the most out of your time. I was quite lucky to have some great managers through my econ time, and they really put it on me to get the most out of this time. And by the end of it, I felt like I clicked into gear, and I was like, okay, I know what I'm going to get out of this grad program, because I'm going to work, and I've got a structure now that I can achieve this. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, letting people know how they can communicate with you just allows communication to flow so much easier. So having that conversation about how you like to receive feedback can just let that relationship really be a healthy one. Tonga says, I recently completed my master's degree in the US whilst competing as a student athlete. I'm now looking to relocate to Australia and pursue a career in the sports industry. What aspects of your experience as an athlete have you leveraged when applying for positions, and how did you use them to strengthen your applications?
Being an athlete is such a good thing, I think, depending on what sport you've come from, but you learn like skills that you're going to take into business. You know how to work in a team. You know how to be cooperative. You know how to get jobs done. You know how to, be diligent to be there on time, to do things like that. Because if you don't rock up for an event or you don't do that, you're the one who's held accountable. So you learn that very quickly. And I think sport's a great tool of learning that. But you also learn how to handle disappointment. You also learn how to handle feedback. So you know yourself how you can start to handle those things. I think sport teaches you more about yourself and how you handle those. And again, use sport to the most of your ability. If that's your area or whatever skill it is, whether it's, different groups outside your social area is such a great tool and a great weapon to be able to figure out whatever you want to do. Whether it's, going and having those drinks with people, and then that conversation comes up, I'm going to Australia, and someone knows someone. Someone always knows someone. There's always that connection. So make the most of that and the skills that you've learned through sport.
Amazing. Great question. And welcome to the community, Tonga. Good to see you. Billy says, what type of goals are more important to you / do you think are more important? Short-term goals or long-term goals?
That's good. I think you've got to set yourself up first with short-term. I think it's a compounding of interest, really. It's, if you put a goal that I'm going to make sure that I post, for example, with LinkedIn, I'm going to make sure that I post 3 times a week. Okay, well, what does that mean? How do I then do that? As Rube said in many times I've listened to this, is that just set yourself a set time for an hour or whatever it is, write those posts and do it. That starts with a goal. Okay, what does that then build into? Well, that might build into me being able to help other people with LinkedIn stuff, or, be able to set up more time to connect with others. And you've got to figure out obviously what those goals are. But I think focusing on setting up really good short-term goals first will lead to really good long-term after that.
Darshini says, Angus, any chance you could connect me with 1 to 2 people / anyone in the public speaking space?
Yep, I can do that. I don't have them right now, but I can probably do that. So send me a message, Darshini, and I'll hook you up.
Otherwise, Ankita Kurunguleka, good friend of Sports Grad, has just started running a little program that you might be interested in, Darshini. All right. Paige says, as an athlete, working with international brands can be tricky because of the disruptor models and regional divisions often used and not being in direct contact with the global department. I'm wondering if this experience crosses over at all and if you've found any instability or obstacles working for a regional division of an international brand.
It's a great point. And I think this would have been a great question maybe 10 years ago. The brand has changed so much and there's been a massive focus on localization. And I think that's a massive power to not only all brands, but the importance of what connects brands and sport. It's community. So if you're not relevant within your local community, you're not really doing that well. If I'm posting a picture of Patrick Mahomes, at the Super Bowl and it's, middle of winter in Australia, I don't think many people are going to care because it's more about, AFL. So knowing your market, knowing your region is really important. And I think that's what Adidas has become really good at. And I think a lot of other brands are also starting to realize that you need to have a localized focus to then be able to connect with your consumer. Because at the end of the day, that's how sales are made.
Wonderful. We got two more questions and I'm going to jump to Ethan's so we can finish with Adrian's. Ethan's is, what's next for you after the grad program? More study, full-time role similar to your current one or something different?
Yeah. So currently my role is full-time. A lot of people see the trainee thing and think that I'm working for pennies. I still had someone actually in the business come up to me and say, are you still here? Are you working for free? I was like, no, I'm not working for free. But so I think for me, I want to make sure that I maximize my time with Adidas, and being able to sink my teeth into some more specialist stuff is really important. And so I think that's probably what I'm going to be looking for, or whether it is within an international role again. I'll have to go through that period and figure it out. But I think I'm quite lucky that I have some amazing options and have a really good sort of business and structure that's really supportive. So everyone that I've spoken to within Adidas is supportive of that, whatever way I decide to go. So always looking for that next opportunity, which will come, I'm sure.
Last question from Adrian, and that is, what's been a pinch yourself moment that has confirmed that working in sport is what you want to do?
I actually got this question from Ruben, and I said that I hadn't had that yet. And I firmly believe that. I think that what we've talked about today in the fact of the journey and the fact that you need to just enjoy the journey is what's way more important. For a lot of people, that might be that they go to a grand final or something, or that's their point, and they're just like, wow, this is what I'm doing. And that's great. Personally, I haven't had that moment. And so for me, it's really important. And if you haven't had that experience, just enjoy what you're doing. And if you're not, change it and figure out another path. So that's what I'd say for that.
What are some of the little things that you've enjoyed on the journey?
Being in communities and being able to connect to different people, I've been able to make so many international friends. And this is the one thing that's really important, is that when you make those international friends, just because I'm not living in Germany, just because I'm not, studying over in the US or those little areas, it doesn't mean that I don't talk to those people. And I think it's really important that when you do build a network, you need to service that. Check in with people, ask them how they're going. I've got one of my best friends who's over in Japan, and we haven't seen each other since last year when we were in China. But we'll still have a chat and see how things are going within Adidas and make sure that, things are going well and still enjoying the job and making sure that, if there's anything that I can help with, that I'm able to help with. So make sure that you service your network. I think that's really important.
It's a great place to end it on. Angus, thanks so much for giving us your time tonight and sharing your story with us and all your insights and a lot of tactical advice as well. I think there's plenty that people can take away from this conversation tonight. So thank you for sharing your insights with us, and thank you for being a part of the Sports Grad community for so long and giving so much back to that. I know you are one of the most active people within the Discord, always offering advice where you can and celebrating others, as well as having plenty of success yourself. So Thanks very much. We'll continue to watch the journey with interest.
Thanks, Rubes. And if anyone wants to reach out and chat, I'm always on LinkedIn, so hit me up.
Hey friends, one last thing before you go. If you really want to make an impact in sport, then subscribe to the Sports Grad newsletter. Inside, we share all the latest job openings and networking events, so you're always aware of opportunities to land a job and grow your network. Plus, we share a Q&A with a professional on how they grow their career in sport. Here we talk about things like how they moved overseas or negotiated their salary or landed a new job or promotion, made a career change, and so much more. It's kind of like a little boost of inspiration in your inbox before the weekend. So if you're like us, you're career driven and you're keen to progress quickly, you're going to love the Sports Grad newsletter. To get it, head to sportsgrad.com.au/newsletter to subscribe or follow the link in the show notes. See you next time.